Hello, my friends, and welcome to Quartet. It's very nice to have you with us here. It's a sunshiny day in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. Spring is on the way, clearly, and we're happy to have you with us as we plumb deeply into the essence of what the emergent new world and what it might look like. I'm joined here, as I am every 2 weeks when we get together, by Penny Kelly. Hi, Penny. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. I'm glad to be back. I
And
missed last time. Go
yeah,
ahead.
and Gregg Braden. Hi, Greg.
I am thrilled to be with you. It is spring here in New Mexico as well, John. We're sharing that beautiful spring weather.
Yeah, and Frank Jacob. Hi, Frank.
Hi, John. Hi, guys. Yeah, it's springtime here too. Imagine that.
Oh,
So it's coming. It's moved into a new direction here, away from all of the cold weather, which is really quite nice. Well, it's nice to have you. There's so much going on here. Hard to keep track of it all, but let's run around the circle and say what's been on your mind. Greg, what do you think?
Oh man, I had to sit down and make a list last night. I am, of course, we're watching what happens in the Catholic Church and the Pope's health and the implications if they're already preparing for a conclave, which I think is interesting because he's still here, but they must know something we don't. I have been really watching the Israeli hostage release, mixed emotions, and uh, I am really interested in how the condition of those hostages is igniting emotion around the world that is turning into policy, and where that policy is probably going to lead over the next few weeks. The United States deeply involved in that. I think we're going to get an audit of Fort Knox and find out if there's anything in there backing and if it's not, we're going to have to answer some big questions about where it is. We could do a whole program on that. And the one that I've really been following the last few days is the way America is responding to the bird flu, or the way that the mandates are coming down. What a lot of people don't know, so 21 million birds have been euthanized, many of them with no signs of the bird flu. But here's what a lot of people are not seeing is that there's a movement to replace the birds with vaccinated birds that are all being vaccinated with the mRNA platform. And at the same time, in the bee community, bees are being sold, the queens now are being sold vaxxed with the mRNA platform. That is supporting this goal to tokenize every form of life, to have, and we have a whole conversation around that, but the piece that I'm finding my community doesn't know is that egg yolk has a natural, it's a natural defense specific to SARS-CoV-2. So it actually breaks that spike protein, and by taking away those egg yolks in the midst of a resurgence of COVID that is happening right now, that is showing up in the healthcare system. So I'm watching all of those kind of simultaneously.
Hmm. Well, Penny, do you have any good news?
Not too much. So, actually, one of the things I've just kind of, like everybody else, have been blown away. I knew there was some fraud in the government, but the amount and the extent of it has just had my eyes rolling in two different directions. It's just unbelievable. So that, the fraud being uncovered, it's like, man, it's too much. It's too much. And the big worry that I have about that is people understanding or coming to a deep understanding of how prone our system is to that kind of fraud, and not being willing to heal it, just dumping the whole thing. That concerns me. Another thing's been on my mind is the Ukraine war coming to an end. I heard Jeffrey Sachs talk in the EU Parliament. Everybody said it was so explosive. I thought, well, that's nothing but common sense. That's nothing but truth. Why is that so explosive? So it has let me see how deeply some people are into this set of fake ideas, fake beliefs, fake, they're all towing the party line, and it's just, it's rotten. It's really bad. So that was another thing. And then there's the gold question, just like Greg said. It's like, uh-oh, what if all that gold is just tungsten with a gold covering on it, which is what we had some years ago. I remember reading about that. So we'll see. What has excited me? Good news. This might be good news. Maybe there's going to be an end to the IRS and income taxes. There'll be other kinds of taxes, but that idea is that just strikes me as that's really good. At the same time, I'm like, well, who's gonna fix the roads and replace the streetlights and all that kind of stuff? So that IRS thing has good and bad. And the last thing, which is not so good, the Epstein files they're saying they're going to release those. And that's going to, I mean, we know what's been going on with the Epstein files, but it's the same kind of effect that I think people will have with the, with the, what was the fraud. We know it's there. We know some children have disappeared, but when that starts being officially put out there, and maybe pictures and stories, that's going to have a devastating effect on people, and their anger is likely to boil over. I'm concerned about how are we going to heal all of those broken hearts and sad minds. So that's it.
Hearing you guys break down what you've been observing, it sort of strikes me as, the more things change, the more things stay the same sometimes. And so, we had, like I said, elections here in Germany over the weekend. And I decided to, because it pretty much turned out exactly the way it always turns out. And so I've spent a little bit of time lately kind of diving into some books, and I thought I'd share them. Like one of them is called The Secret of Light by Walter Russell. And I felt it was uncanny because when I got the subject for today's quartet, a couple of passages kind of just popped out at me that seemed like totally synchronistic. So I wanted to just read those sentences to you to see what you guys think. The first one is, throughout long aeons, man hath walked his earth with eyes of outer seeing, giving belief to that earth of his body's sensing. Throughout his new aeons, he must walk the earth of inner seeing and know me in it as but visioning it in light of me and in light of him. So the idea is to move into the higher state of consciousness. And the other book that I kind of dug into was by a guy called Caleb Seth Pearl. And it's called Our Own Your Sovereignty, right? And again, like uncanny, right? Even right in the pre-word, right off the get-go. Humanity now needs to reclaim its sovereignty. Humanity has been living within its social self for too long. It is the false personality that, like a game character, navigates the body through life. Yet humanity has come to over-identify with this artificial construct. Through entrapment with this lesser self, humanity has lost contact, communication with the greater self. It is within the lesser self that manipulation comes easily. People are vulnerable to external influence and control. People are thus submissive to power. In order to understand human sovereignty, it is first necessary to understand what external power is and how it is used to wield influence and control. When external forms of power are understood, then internal empowerment can be recognized and brought forth. It is time to move into the greater self, to reclaim it. Humanity needs now to reclaim its sovereignty. Only in this way will humanity step into its rightful future. The new world awaits a new sovereign human being. It is time to own your sovereignty. Very powerful words, and we're talking about a new world, right? About this new world stuff. And another synchronicity, Caleb Seth Pearl, the Sethian Gnostics had this saying called The goal of Gnostic practice was and still is not to see ourselves as gods, but to see as gods see. In rapture, awaken to the divine presence in all things, feeling the shock of the beautiful. Another way of saying the same kind of thing, seeing things and taking ownership of our greater self. So I thought I'd
Good.
share those sort of few words there to kind of kick things off.
Oh, good. Appreciate that. Caleb Seth Pearl is a pseudonym for probably Kingsley Dennis. We're trying to figure out who the author of that book is, but Kingsley kind of generated it, and so we're
Yeah.
quite familiar. It's a wonderful book.
Well, then it's another
Also,
synchronicity.
yeah. Also, on the subject of sovereignty, we had a wonderful transition talk this last weekend with Jeff Weitzman, who was quite successful. We had, over 250 people. The other thing is that the Doge Trump Musk effort to kind of clean up the government is lauded by many people, but what's starting to come up is an alternative or a secondary issue related to that scenario, suggesting that what they're doing is cleaning house, which certainly needs to be done, but they're setting the stage for a technocracy because they've loaded the whole transition team and the whole bunch of new people into the government, all of whom are dead set toward the technocratic kind of direction. And so that'll be interesting to see where that happens. And again, it moves us back, or at least me, back to the whole notion that we don't have much time before this technocratic kind of takeover becomes successful, and we've got to head off in a new direction. So thank you all very much. It's time to dig into our topic of the day. Last session that we had here at Quartet, we spent a great deal of time talking about where the emergent world was coming and what the characteristics of this world might be, and we hit upon this notion of the question that essentially is, how do you kind of characterize what this new world might be? If you were looking at this in kind of marketing terms, and you were looking out at this emergent things, and you needed a really crisp kind of idea about how you would kind of describe what this world might be, to make clear that it was different than where we've been, maybe different than other kind of possibilities like the dystopian kind of direction that a good part of the world is going, then what would that look like and how would it be? And so we decided that it would be a good idea to make a run at that this week. And so, Greg, let's start with you and see what do you think?
For me, it would be based upon the assumption that we want to and are motivated to reach a full potential through self-actualization, that everything is based upon that. And if that assumption is true, then it is reflected in all the choices that we make, all the policies we develop, the laws that we passed, how technology is applied. And we're seeing this now. The technology we know is never right, wrong, good, or bad. It's the thinking underlying how it's applied. So I think that first assumption is key, is that we want to, and that we're actually motivated to reach a greater potential and to do it ourselves through this self-actualization. And if that's true, then I think there have to be values that we agree upon that reflect that. And for me, one of the most important is that life itself, life is sacred, and life has value. I think that the value of integrity is the code of conduct within our new world, and we could break that integrity down into a number of different ways of looking at this. That well-being is the goal, and if we are all in an emerging world, and we're all agreeing that well-being individually and collectively is the goal, that informs the choices that we're making, that we address our lives and one another with kindness and compassion, And it doesn't mean that disagreements don't come up, because they're always going to. It's not the disagreements that are the problem, it's how we communicate those with one another and how we resolve those. Respect, tolerance, honesty when it comes to diverse ideas, and self-reliance, I think, has to be a really important part of this. What that means is, for me, because a lot of people confuse self-reliance with self-sufficiency. Self-reliance is the opportunity for us to do the best we can on our own. And when we need some help, it's okay to accept it, but we do as much as we can. We take care of the things that need to be taken care of rather than looking outside of ourselves. In our physical world, in our emotional world, in our financial world, in our 3D everyday living world. And that is a principle I'm finding young people, that is a foreign idea to a lot of young people, that they should be self-reliant. And I think that would be a really important part of this. And that leads to the principles. So the third part, the principles of the new world, if the assumptions and the values are true, is to strive for harmony rather than balance in the new world. And this is a conversation that comes up a lot in our new events. People keep thinking they want balance in their lives and they want balance in the world. We don't really want balance. We want harmony. And there's an example I give. We live in a rural area in northern New Mexico. We have a population of coyotes. We got a population of rabbits. It's never in balance, perfect balance, yet it finds harmony. When there's a bumper crop of rabbits, more coyotes show up, and they maintain that harmony. But in physics, balance means that nothing's happening. If something is in complete balance, it means what's happening here is there, and it's the imbalance that is the trigger for the evolution. So we don't really want balance, and there's a whole conversation we can have about that. I think the next principle is one of sovereignty that we mentioned earlier, and I think seeing us as sovereign individuals, the freedoms that come with being sovereign individuals. And again, each of these have subheadings. We could go through all kinds of freedoms. I don't know if we want to spell all that out or not. And that nature is the model. If we can build not just the way the community works, but the way we live our lives, reflecting natural principles. I ask people in live audiences all the time, who wants a new world? Everybody raise their hand. So I think that's a huge shift in the mindset. Rather than modifying existing structures, we may not even need those we may not need a government the way we've got a government now. We may not need a financial system the way we need an economic system. And I have been with indigenous communities who have beautiful economies, but they don't have money, and it works really well. It's about people getting the things that they need, vital resources of food, energy, water, medicine, and being able to share those as a community. So I'm going to stop there, but these are the ideas that I spent some time looking at these last night, and I had pages, and I just condensed them down to these three topics. So thank you.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much, Gregg. And that's a great start, because these are the kind of the building blocks that kind of support everything in this new world, is what we're trying to talk about here.
I have a couple things that I would point out. I started with, right now, if we had to design a new world, because of the corruption, I think, I put truth at the top of the list. That was the value, and the principle was, okay, we're going to be honest with what we're doing.
Yeah.
And the assumption is that we can be honest and the world isn't going to fall apart, that it'll strengthen because of that. And then the next thing was peace. Peace was the value, and the principle was, therefore, we need good relationships, working relationships. The next thing, and this is something that I've been so aware of, the value is beauty. we do not allow ourselves enough beauty. And I think we could see much more beauty. And the principle would be that beauty would be in the design of everything we do, everything we say, everything we make. And that would be everything from art and architecture. We have some of the ugliest buildings in the world in America. Oh my God. And boxes, yeah, they symbolize everybody's in there, is in their box. But we could have beauty in our language, in our literature, our governance. What would a beautiful government look like? What would that government say and do? And then
It's,
technology. So
It's an oxymoron.
no, it's not. It would be something to think about. What makes a beautiful government? It's a government that promotes beauty in each individual that lives in that country or in that state or that region or whatever. And then I, the next thing was the value was independence. And that required both self-sufficiency and self-reliance. So that's why I said Gregg is reading my paper here. And I think that there's a certain amount of self-development that comes along with being self-reliant. And because we haven't been self-reliant, we have been suffering from arrested development. So if we can get independent, if we can get clear of the system that has sucked everybody in and pretended it's our great uncle and it's going to take care of us, and oh man, has it taken care of us, not the way we want it, then we have this option then to use this self-sufficiency and self-reliance in a way that benefits not only ourselves individually, but everybody in the family, all of the people in the region, all of Mother Nature, all of birds, flowers, trees, everything, mountains, rivers. So there's that. And then the next big value was really simplicity. Why do we have to get things all torqued up? Simplicity is the value, and how that appears in terms of principle is a clean world without waste. We don't need to be producing so much waste. And what do we need in order to have that kind of clean world? We need some scientific progress. And I'm hoping that maybe we can get some of that from ETs that have extraordinary technology. And if we can't, we have all these young people that have brilliantly created or researched and implemented systems for cleaning up water, the ocean, the air. We have some amazing scientists, but they can't get any traction because the people who own all those big corporations are afraid they're going to lose money if they have to clean up their mess. I'll stop there.
Yeah, well, that's good. Frank, what do you got?
Well, I noticed that both Greg and Penny seem to have spidey senses and lifted all of my my notes. So, but it's good. It shows that there's a lot of synchronicity going on here, and I respect what you guys are saying. And one of the things you had listed on the notes was, is there a theme, a brand that might capture the essence of this new world? And I instantly had this flash of the letter zero and the letter I. In other words, it's in the artificial intelligence world, we have zeros and ones. But what came to me is that what we need is organic intelligence, and that is the O and the I. So the brand was with the OI. It's like we need the OI, man. It's like, we bring in this humanness. Came across this little factoid that the amount of UFO sightings rises in direct relationship to the lack of spiritual focus in a society. Did you know that?
I did. Yes.
So the less spiritual, the more UFOs. It almost implies that, like, since atheistic societies don't want to identify in higher powers, somehow they have, they have those orbs appear in the sky. It's almost like that's what they need to substitute the respect for some kind of a higher power that's out there. Um, but I think as far as principles and values that if I look at my list and what you guys really maybe didn't cover that I had is if we're talking about principles, I think that our society, the new society, should be built on something based on the merits of the citizens and what they've achieved. That is actually something that we honor, and that the people that are in some kind of a new leadership position, they've earned their qualifications as a result of of their experience, of the, let's say, the peer respect or the respect they've gotten from the society around them, that showed them that they were willing to serve the greater good of society, and they achieved great things doing that. And if they do it with total unwavering integrity, which is what you were talking about with honesty, Penny, then those kinds of positions bring a much more harmonized or conscious form automatically of a government. And whether it's even still necessary, of course, is up for debate. And if we're talking about a new world, we actually should try to refrain from looking at the old structures. Plus, another thing I think that's important to value is health of the human body. And of course, this ties into what you were saying about nature, but our bodies are nature. And so many people, I mean, it always strikes me as in a way kind of shocking whenever I get off a plane in America and I just see the level of obesity and the level of the just the posture of people standing in line at the customs, for example, or so. I just there's these little signs, like if you aren't paying attention to those things, then you're unconscious. You're in that unconscious realm where you're wasting your moment of human expression in the limited time that you have on this planet, reincarnation aside, right? Um, and it also affirms your respect for the sacredness of your body and by extension, all of life, and then the respect for nature. So this also leads to my next point, which is the idea of the mystical aspect of humanity, which seems to have gone lost. There's indigenous cultures that, Greg, you were talking about. They have other forms. They don't really have a monetary system, but this means that they've kind of they're drawing into another form of connectivity and exchange in their societies that we seem to have lost in the Western world. And so I think getting, back and valuing the mystical aspect of humanity is an important value for us to have in order to discover those dormant or lost abilities that we have, like ESP, for example. And I'm absolutely convinced that the ingenuity of the OI is going to come up with things that are going to, bacteria that eat plastics or whatever it is. I think we're going to eliminate all those toxins that are out there with the human ingenuity. And maybe another goal would be something like a seed bank, because when I was in a phase of my life where I was heavily into nutrition, and I worked with a woman called Ann Wigmore, and she taught about sprouting seeds and different kinds of wheat. And you learn about, like, there's this, ancient wheat versus the hybridized new wheat and what the difference is. And you realize that, my God, sometimes farmers, because they were under contract with Monsanto, literally in the course of 5 or 10 years, ate the genetic store of seed memory going back thousands of years and replaced it with some hybridized thing. So, my God, what a sin that is, right? So, I mean, the idea of a seed bank has to be one of the goals where we can preserve that ancient harmonized form of the seeds. And maybe the way to get that isn't lost completely, because there's these Saibagigi experiments that show if you place seeds within a certain electrical field that matches the electrical field per volt square meter on the earth maybe 1,000 years ago, that lo and behold, those plants actually grow with the characteristics of the seeds of that ancient time. It's amazing, right? So, but it still means we have to go ahead and we have to create those things, because we nourish our body with seeds. And if we have falsified information in those seeds going into our body, we're going to affect the biomechanisms within our organic bodies as well. Maybe three other quick mentions. Media, we need to goal needs to be to create a form of media that is transparent, that helps people to understand what's happening in the world in an honest fashion, that gives them access to events around the world, that helps them maybe celebrate some of the victories around the world rather than just finding out about another war that just took place, right? Education, I think you touched on that, Penny. Or actually both of you, education is going to be very, very important, but not the educational systems that we've got in place now, which are designed to keep you inside of a box, to keep you conformed to a system which is running the way things are in the world right now. So that needs to be reinvented altogether.
Well, thank you. Thank you. That's very provocative. I've thought of a number of those things as well. And in particular, the whole notion that you're moving to a new world, and how does that happen? Well, it's breakthroughs on top of breakthroughs and top of breakthroughs. And so there's a kind of a principle or a value underneath all of this that has to be related to invention and creativity and the value of out of the box thinking and other kinds of things. You need to celebrate all of that. I went down this in terms of saying that there is a set of principles that, and my guess is there's only 6 or 8 of them or something, that start to say the things like the purpose of government is to make the lives of the citizens better. So principles that say you can do anything that you want as long as you don't hurt anybody physically. And there's a series of those kinds of things that, if you distilled them down, I've got a whole list of them I've been collecting, but you distill them down, they become the kind of the basic decision-making framework for that were taught in schools, and everybody just understood. And what you do is you get rid of all of the piles of regulations and laws, because everybody would know that this is the way you treated people, and you'd have to work your way into the thing. That's what I was kind of thinking about in terms of principles. The assumptions issue was trying to kind of parachute yourself into this new world and say, what are the assumptions that everybody is carrying with them into this space that is essentially the product of the decade before or whatever. And by that I mean is that we're just at the beginning of the extraordinary change that's coming downstream from many kind of different dimensions. And all of those are going to, very much like the Great Depression, kind of fundamentally colored a whole generation of people so that they saw everything downstream, and all their decisions were made based upon that experience. There are going to be some of those that are going to come downstream, and they need to be articulated. Essentially, you just say you're never going to do that again. If they run us up to the edge of a nuclear war, for instance, you can hope that people kind of learn, scared to death, if you will, or a near-death experience, and they say we're just not going to do that again. That becomes this assumption that colors everything in the way that the decisions are made. And then the values you've already touched on so much, but there is a core set of values of honesty and integrity and the other kind of things that do not exist right now in general. And what you really, if you're going to build yourself a new world or new country, whatever it is that you're going to work on, then you'd really need to do that. Now, the goals would be starting to look out and say, where are we going? And where do we want this place to be? And what is on the horizon? What's our vision? I mean, this is a byproduct of kind of an image of what's out there. And it would be really critical and fundamentally important to be able to have this going, because there is going to be so much stuff going on, and things are going to be far, far different than they've been in the past. And the breakthroughs with the inventions and, say, connections with other life off of the planet, all of which just fundamentally change the essence of who we are and how we work, the paradigm essentially. And so you have to have a vision. You have to have some idea about down there, which is what, of course, we're working on here at the Arlington Institute. But that becomes a goal. And so, in terms, if you translated that into, say, government policy, other kind of things, that would be all pointing to these goals about pointing to cleaning up the environment, for instance, would be an explicit, very important central goal that you know, you could point all the technology, you could reprogram the national laboratories and say, don't build bombs. I want you to clean up find out ways in which to clean up the world. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff like that that you could lay in one after another, and it'd be very clear. It would not be much, you know, like it is right now, where there's no clarity and it's all kind of moving around. But you lay out these things because you're looking at the vision of where the world is and where you want to go. So that's what I've been thinking about.
Ooh,
Well, John, I think what you have just identified as the next piece, the vision is directly linked to the implementation of everything that we've
Yeah.
said. So when I think about these things, I think there are three scenarios, and when I'm with live groups, they kind of think the same thing. We talk about a new world. For some people, they envision the old world ends, and then we start with something new, some kind of a catastrophic event, war, you know, asteroid hits the Earth, pandemic, whatever. And that could happen. And the other is that leaders of the world come together consciously with the intent to build something that is good for their people and good for their families because they genuinely care and want to move that direction. We don't see that happening right now. It could. And then the third is that it's piecemeal. We begin implementing these ideas in one one aspect of the existing society because it is broken. And then when something like maybe the economic system breaks and we do this, and then, you know, the environmental catastrophe is so bad we find new energy. But what we find then is that those systems are so interrelated that there would be an organic cascade effect where because you've implemented the new form of energy, now that new form of energy is implementing so many other industries and so many people's lives, and the economy has to reflect that.
everybody acting, talking, thinking like there's going to be this cataclysm that'll be a marker,
Yeah.
and that from that point forward, everything changes. It doesn't usually work that way. It's messy, it's sloppy, there's a lot of back and forth, and then all of a sudden something crystallizes beautifully.
And what was one of the questions that I put up was about kind of a branding or an idea. I mean, there's a conceptual, there's an image, there's a mental image that we've got to build around this new world, this new vision, this vision for a new world. Conceptually, functionally, it's no different than, you know, Coca-Cola or anything else. It is a set of words, colors, phrases, sounds, whatever, that that can be instantly kind of referenced in one's mind when you say it. You know, it's going to be. And Frank, I don't know if you have any more that you would like to say about that. That I think that that's really going to be important early on, because it becomes a way that you can, you know, kind of telegraph exactly what you're talking about, rather than kind of new world, which could mean anything.
Well, you know, the whole trend in the last decades has been the digitization of everything. And I think it was inevitable and it was going to happen, and because it's part of the human curiosity to go that direction. But I think, like everything, the pendulum swings, you know, and we're going to have to, you know, remember that the analog world is the world that gave birth to the digital world. And with the help of digital tools, you know, we've of course explored more of the quantum realms, almost the non-material realms of existence. And it's almost like we need to remember that we can use those same tools to actually explore the magic of the analog world like we never knew it before. And the mechanisms within the analog world are fantastic. I mean, they're little understood. It's almost like they make the example that, we're talking about going to other planets, but we haven't even explored the ocean floor on our own planet. We know nothing, right? It's like we know like this much about what's going on in the ocean floor, right? So we have so much to discover. So whatever branding, I think has to be done, it has to somehow make the analog material world sacred again.
That-
And the OI is just, I guess, something that popped into my mind. But I think that with all things, they need to kind of be snappy, short, easy to picture, and maybe attached with some kind of an interesting image, because that's a easy way for people
all
to
right.
remember something. Even the letters OI themselves would form an interesting image. And when people talk about encounters with extraterrestrials, they often talk about symbols that the extraterrestrials, don't they, Penny? Right? They have some kind of a symbol on them, or they remember some specific symbol. So symbology is a very, very powerful
Right.
art in the history of humanity, which is kind of little really understood or even valued, because we're so obsessed with this new, cool, sexy digital world that I think we need to rediscover what we've already had and what we've forgotten, or what we really didn't understand to the level that we could, before we just toss it by the wayside. And yes, Greg, the idea that this could be the last generation of natural biological human beings is something that I kind of open up a lot of my talks with, and it shocks a lot of people, and they don't want to believe that, right? But I mean, look, if you really drill down into that technology, yeah, I mean, you can't
Yeah.
deny that there are people that are messing around with this stuff, and that want to, you know, replace or push the natural world out. And so preserving that natural world somehow, in a way, maybe it has, again, to tie into this electric universe idea that electricity and particular tension of electricity per square meter actually evolves a certain kind of energy, and that may be a way to preserve the consciousness or the integrity of the original human blueprint. Although very little is known about it, even plasma physics is still a very kind of new budding science.
All right.
Yeah, well,
Terrific.
writing onto that, John, I've thought about this a lot when I was writing the new book. The book
Yeah.
is titled Pure Human because that's focused on us. For this topic, I would call it Pure Earth. Pure Earth, you could have a
Oh, that's
t-shirt,
nice.
Pure Earth. I think that would resonate. I've done this in live groups, and people, it really resonates with people who aren't even on board necessarily with what we're talking about, but they are drawn to the concept. So that would be my contribution.
That's very nice, and it chains nicely with the connection with nature and so on.
Sure.
Penny?
I was actually thinking about the branding process. What is it? What happens? You come up with a picture, a logo, a graphic. You have some colors. You have a couple of words, and so what was coming to me was a picture of Earth with a brain overlaid for the two hemispheres, and some sort of frequency coming out of that, and the words community of or Earth, a community of consciousness.
Mhm.
And that was, it's like, okay, there's
Well,
a,
that's
what color
good.
do you want?
Yeah,
Let's
and we
have a
could,
contest.
we could
Well,
encourage all of our viewers to suggest options
yeah.
and ideas around this, because somewhere along the line early on, as we move down this track, we're going to have to need to be able to quickly and clearly say what we're talking about. And by the way, it needs to communicate the essence of, as Greg has just said, what this might be. And so thank you. And thank you all very much for your contribution here. An interesting conversation. So thank you all for being with us. Thank you all for the discussion here. And for all of those of you who are our viewers, we very much appreciate it. Come back and see us in 2 weeks. Take care.
Thank you, Frank, Penny, John. Love you all.
Thank you all. It's been a
Bye-bye,
pleasure as
everyone.
always.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, take care.